When you're not the same person anymore, sometimes it feels like I have lived several lifetimes, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that makes me feel exceptional, just in the sense that the person I was at one point no longer exists in the same form, and the person I am now has been shaped by everything that came in between. Each lifetime asks something different of me. A change in school shifted how I learned to belong. A change in a job changed how I spent my energy and what I believed my time was worth. A change in where I lived altered what felt familiar and safe. These were not small adjustments. They rearranged my days, my habits, and eventually the way I saw myself. Some changes were chosen. Others arrived without permission. Death does that. The death of a family member, the loss of a friend, the ending of a relationship, the quiet closing of something that mattered and could not be reopened. Those moments don't just change circumstances. They change how you understand the world. They change what feels fragile. They change what you stop taking for granted. There are versions of me that existed before those losses that no longer exist now. They were not replaced. They were carried forward in pieces. Other changes came through responsibility, obligations that reshaped how I slept, how alert I stayed, and how much rest I allowed myself. Life asked me to stay awake when I once rested easily. It asked me to stay steady when my body wanted to retreat. Even joyful changes carry weight. A new puppy, a new life entering the world, things chosen with love that still demand adaptation. They change how you move through your days. They ask for consistency. They quietly close some doors while opening others. Over time, these changes stack, and with them comes anxiety, depression, moments where the world feels too loud, too fast, or too uncertain to meet in the same way you once did. There were periods when anxiety stopped me from doing things I used to do without thinking, simple things, normal things. That was one of the hardest lifetimes, because anxiety doesn't just ask you to cope. It asks you to change how you function entirely. It disrupts patterns that once gave comfort. It makes familiarity feel unreliable. And familiarity is where most of us find stability. I don't think anyone likes too much change. Predictability feels safe. Routine gives structure. Stability lets you rest. Most of us want a life that feels steady enough to stand on. But there came a point where I could no longer live the way I was living. I could feel myself spiraling. I could see the narrowing of my world. And I realized I was standing at a quiet crossroads. I could continue down a path that made life smaller and more guarded, or I could begin the slow, uncomfortable work of digging myself out. That wasn't courage in the dramatic sense. It was survival. I chose to confront my fears, not all at once, and not perfectly, but deliberately. I learned skills to manage anxiety so I could function in the world again. I learned how to sit with discomfort without letting it decide my limits. That version of me demanded endurance and patience, and it left marks I still carry. When I look at all these lifetimes together, I don't feel loss as much as accumulation. I feel changed, expanded, worn in certain places, stronger in ways that aren't always visible. I know I'm not alone in this. There are many people who have lived like this. People who didn't settle into the simplest version of life. People who wanted more, not in the sense of constant achievement, but in the sense of alignment. People who kept searching for a life that felt true, rather than merely acceptable. I am still searching, not because I'm dissatisfied, but because I don't want to settle for less than what feels honest. I want my future to align with who I actually am, not just who I learned to be to survive earlier chapters. I don't judge the versions of myself that came before. Each one did what it needed to do. Each one adapted to the conditions it was given. Each one helped me get here. I am not the same person anymore, and that isn't something I mourn. It's something I respect. Because surviving change, adapting when stability disappears, and continuing to move forward without losing yourself entirely, that matters. It counts. Even when it doesn't look impressive from the outside. Tonight, when I think about all the lifetimes I've lived, what I feel most is a quiet respect for the person who kept going through all of them. And that feels enough to sit with.